By what name are you known?
There are some who call me Tim.
Welcome to another episode of Timmy Talks, the channel where we talk old school magic. And welcome back to the Hill Giant Cup, the edition number 5 in Hilversum, the Netherlands. And we have reached the semi-finals, and in the semi-finals we're going to look at Chris, who's playing robots, and he's taking on Richard, and Richard is playing a prison deck. I've called it Icy Prison. And yeah, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting match. Like I said, this is the semi-finals, so the winner is going to go to the finals and is still in the running of winning this whole event. Before I start with the deck decks though, because I've got lovely deck photos of both of these decks, first a quick message from our sponsor, 3for1 Trading. 3for1 Trading is one of Europe's leading Magic the Gathering retailers. Their online shop has a fantastic selection of high-end Magic cards, especially for vintage, legacy, and yes, old school Magic players. They now exclusively offer my community free, fully insured and fast worldwide shipping on all their high-end singles, full sets and out-of-print sealed products. They upload new cards every Wednesday and have weekly sale offers and reductions waiting just for you. Use my code TIMMY to get free worldwide shipping on your first order over $500 or euros. Have fun ordering those cards, and thank you 3for1 Trading for sponsoring this video. And we are back and ready to dive into the deck decks. I'm going to start with the deck of the player on the left. That is Chris. Let's take a look at his robots deck. And here we see the robots deck of Chris. So this is really a tier 1 deck, right? Robots is really strong in Swedish, despite the fact that you can only play with one workshop. It's just really good. And maybe it's good to first start with why is it called robots. That's because it's built around the two artifact creatures, Triskelion and Suchi. So Triskelion, probably the best one of those two. It's 6 to cast for a 1/1 creature. I know that sounds really bad, but hold on. It comes into play with 3+1/+1 counters, so it's basically a 4/4. And then the best thing is these counters, you can take them off one at a time and deal 1 damage to any target. And this may not sound like much, but it means if your opponent, for example, disenchants your Trike, in response you can always take the counters off and kill a creature of your opponent, deal some damage to your opponent. This creature always delivers. It always gives value. It's so difficult. And even when you counter it in this deck, you can also play an Animate Dead and get it back onto the battlefield. It's just really tough to deal with this creature. And this creature is even better in combination with Copy Artifact. Copy Artifact is an enchantment for 1 blue and 1 that allows you to, you guessed it, copy an artifact. I mean, this is just bonkers. Before you know it, you'll have an army of Triskelions, and don't underestimate the Trike, because if your opponent doesn't have a blocker for it, you can attack for 4, afterwards take the counters off, so you can deal 7 damage with a single Trike if it's not checked, right? And if you have 2 Trikes, that means you can deal 14 points of damage just by having 1 clear attack with 2 Triskelions, which is not uncommon in a deck like this. It is just insane. And then he's on 6. Look at the amount of burn in the deck of Chris. 4 bolts, 4 psionic blasts. He can finish it off. I am not surprised to see this deck do so well here at this tournament. So let's take a look at what the opponent of Chris can do against this today. And here we see the deck of Richard, and this deck is really a prison deck. It's so nasty, so nasty. As you can see, it's blue, it's green, it's black. But it really revolves around artifacts. They're really the most important component. Maybe, by the way, before I continue, you notice that in the sideboard there of Richard, we see a Hill Giant, a signed Hill Giant, and that is because he won this tournament before. And when you win the tournament, you get a card that the tournament is named after. So in this case, he got a Hill Giant. We all signed the Hill Giant. My signature is on there somewhere. And yeah, this deck, man, it is horrible. It's a prison deck. So what a prison deck wants to do, in case you don't know, it wants to make sure that the opponent cannot do anything. It's in a prison, cannot move, but it's still alive. And then at a certain point, he wants to win. And I think the win con here of his deck is, of course, Titania's Song. Titania's Song, an enchantment from Antiquities, 1 green and 3, I believe. And it turns all the non-artifact creatures into artifact creatures, and they lose all their abilities, and they get the power and toughness equal to their casting cost. So for example, your Icy Manipulator turns into a 4/4 vanilla creature, and then you can start attacking. One of the good things about Titania's Song is, even if your opponent has a way to remove the Titania's Song, the ability of Titania's Song remains till the end of the turn. So they stay like 4/4 creatures, 2/2 creatures, whatever. Making it really hard to kind of deal with the Titania Song. Now, what does this deck want to do? Because Titania Song is just at the end of the prison process. What this deck wants to do, it wants to play out the Winter Orb. Winter Orb is an artifact that says you can only untap one land during your untap phase. And then you go and untap your one land, and you're really happy, right? Because you just have to play a little bit slower. It's super annoying, but at least you still get to untap a land. Well, that's where you're wrong, because Richard is also playing with Icy Manipulator. So with Icy Manipulator, he's going to tap down the land that you just untapped. Meaning you just don't have any mana anymore. Okay, you still have your mana rocks and maybe you have mana dorks, but that's it. Your lands, you can no longer use them when he has his Winter Orb and his Icy Manipulator on the table. And of course, when he plays it all out, maybe you still have a few lands untapped. So you just got to really think about, okay, how am I going to use that mana to maybe destroy these artifacts? Well, that is also where cards come in like Power Sink. Power Sink in this deck is very powerful because Power Sink is not just a good counterspell, it also forces you to tap down your lands. If you tap down your lands, you've got a problem because of Winter Orb. It is not good, I can tell you that. And then, of course, he's got a way to deal with your creatures, and that is the Abyss. He's playing with 3 copies of the Abyss, of course, the powerful enchant world from Legend. So this card says that during your upkeep, you have to sacrifice a non-artifact creature. Which again is not great, because then you're going to lose your non-artifact creatures. If, of course, your opponent is playing with artifacts, that could be a difficult thing for Richard to deal with. But of course, Richard does have counter magic. He also is playing with 2 copy artifacts himself, and he's playing with relic barriers. And relic barriers tap down an artifact, which is really good. So if your opponent is playing artifact heavy and thinks, the Abyss is not going to work against my Trike, my Suchi, my other artifact creatures, well, tough love, because he's got relic barriers, he can tap them down. And talking about relic barrier Winter Orb is a known combo. What it does is when you tap down your Winter Orb, it's one of only 2 artifacts that gets deactivated by tapping them down. The other one is Howling Mine. So he can use his Relic Barrier, or of course his Icy, to tap down his Winter Orb, meaning he still gets to untap, but you don't. So it's like super unfair. This deck, it's super controlling, it's super nasty, it's probably gonna win. I think the Achilles heel of a deck like this is a very consistent quick deck, like a mono green deck, like a 2-color creature heavy deck. Just decks that go really heavy. And of course, decks that have a lot of weapons against artifacts. Like I remember when I played against Richard, I won one of the games. Why? Because of Energy Flux. I casted Energy Flux and he couldn't counter it, and that was that. It was too much. He couldn't pay all the mana for all the artifacts he had on the board at the time. So Artifact Hate is really good against this deck, and creature heavy decks, or quick creature heavy decks, are really good in my experience against this type of deck. And because of these 2 weaknesses, I think it's really commendable, that he's actually won a tournament with this deck, because yes, it's a good deck, but it has the weak spots. And of course, what you see a lot with these prison decks and combo decks is after the first game, you kind of know what Richard wants to do, what the opponent of the combo deck or prison deck wants to do. You can sideboard accordingly, and you start playing differently, and that's what makes it more difficult if you're the person who's playing that prison or combo deck. So winning game 1 is actually almost a necessity with decks like these, because it's going to get tougher in game 2 and 3 because your opponent knows what your strategy is. Okay, so this is the deck of Richard. It looks very, very scary. We've looked at the deck of his opponent, so let's see if it really is scary. Let's go to the match. Game number 1, here we go. On the left, we have Chris, and he is playing with the Robots deck. On the right, we have Richard, and he's playing with the Prison deck. So let's see. I think if you're Chris, you want to just play very aggressive. And of course, if you have the Prison deck, you always go for that control. You want to get your opponent in the prison and win from there. But it's got to be tough for Richard, because remember, the best way of him to deal with creatures is by playing an Abyss. And of course, his opponent's playing with Robots, so the Abyss is not going to do much. We see Chris here, by the way, taking a mulligan. So he's going to shuffle. And look at that, Richard is going to do exactly the same. Okay, and let's see if the players are going to keep this hand. It looks like Richard is, so he's going to go down to 6. Let's see if Chris is also keeping the hand. Ooh, look at this. He's going to go down to 5, taking a second mulligan. Wow. And okay, here we see the hand of Richard there. Went quite fast. We saw Tropical Island, Relic Barrier, and some other stuff. I think a Winter Orb. But the most important thing here is that Chris is taking another mulligan, going down to 5. So we have Chris taking the second mulligan here. Let's see if he wants to keep it. Now remember, these are of course fully powered decks. So if you have an Ancestral Recall or Time Twister or Demonic Tutor in your hand, then it's already pretty good and you can get back from starting with 5. So look at that, he's keeping the hand. So starting with 5 cards. Not ideal, but like I said, if you have some of those power cards or restricted cards, you can definitely get back into it. And he's on the play as well. So look at that, just 4 cards left, playing a City of Brass. Passing the turn to Richard. And Richard's going to go Tropical Island, Mox Ruby, tapping both. And playing a Felwar Stone. That Felwar Stone can now make any color of mana because of that City of Brass on the side of Chris. There's another City of Brass. That's also an annoying mana base. Gonna go down to 18. Yeah, that's gonna hurt. There's a Time Walk. Okay. That's at least something. Can he find some card draw? Passing the turn. Not finding a land, unfortunately. And yeah, Chris is of course in a difficult situation after taking a double mulligan. And there we see a Relic Barrier here for Richard. And a pass. There's a pass by Chris. I mean, the good news for Chris is that Richard doesn't have the type of deck that can just apply a lot of quick pressure. It's a slow prison deck. And the good news, of course, for Richard is then again that Chris is now giving him lots of time. Here we see an Icy Manipulator. Yeah, that can get kind of annoying with those City of Brasses. And again, a pass by Chris. Yeah, probably showing a hand to the buddy here, saying, I really got nothing going for me. Or probably no lands, at least. There's another Icy passing the turn. And, you know, this is not ideal for Richard. Would have loved to also have a land drop so he could start tapping down the City of Brasses. But the second Icy is also kind of brutal. And there we see a Psionic Blast. But he is going to take 2 damage from his own blast and 2 damage from the city. So dropping to 14. And I'm going to play quite aggressive. I wonder now if Richard has a Winter Orb. If he has a Winter Orb, then this is kind of in the bag. He can go Winter Orb and keep... Yeah, there's the Winter Orb. Yeah, and he can keep the untapped land, of course, tapped with the Icy Manipulator that he has. We're probably going to see that now he's going to pass turn. And there we see Richard tapping down the land. So this is going to be really tough. And we could be in for a long game, actually, because now Richard just has the board of Chris under control. Chris is in the prison that Richard has built. But Richard has, of course, only one win con, and that is that Titania song that's in the deck. And there we see the Chaos Orb. 2 cards left in hand there, passing the turn. Gonna tap down the land. And I think if you're Chris, what you want to do is you want to try to get your Black Lotus, your Moxen, your one land, because you've got like one little opening when you could be able to do something. But it's going to be extremely difficult for him, obviously. There's again the pass. Yeah, and I think this first game is not going to be the most exciting one. But I think we will see eventually Richard win. That's at least my prediction. And there we see Chris forced to discard a Suchi. There's a Tropical Island. There's the pass again, of course, tapping down the lands. He's going to draw, probably has to discard again. And remember, okay, there we do see a land. So we see the Library of Alexandria. That's actually pretty good. Because he can untap it, and then Richard's going to tap it, but in response, he will then draw a card. Here we see the Mox Pearl. I'm a little bit surprised that he plays out the Pearl, to be honest. Because he can now continue tapping it down. Then again, of course, you can use the Pearl in your upkeep. But he doesn't have white, so he doesn't have disenchants. Yeah, this is going to be really rough. And we see him flipping here on the library. And I think that's a good decision, because that library is helping Chris to kind of go through his deck and find a few cards that can get him out of this mess. Let's see if the flip's going to work. Flipping in the semis. And yeah, it's a hit. And you see Richard really taking the time. That makes sense, of course. He knows that this game is almost in the bag. And sometimes those games are the hardest because you know you should win it, but you're not there yet. So you got to play really focused and make the right decisions. And this was a good flip. Taking care of the library, which is a good decision. And remember, you can use the relic barriers here to tap down the Mox Pearl. You can use the Icy to tap down the one untapped land that he can untap. So he's really in prison here, Chris. And 3 cards here. I wouldn't be surprised if there are 3 counter spells in hand by Richard. Has total control. He's going to tap 2 blue. What are we going to see? Okay, tap 1 blue. Okay, Transmute Artifact here. Also tap the Felwer Stone. I wonder what he's going to go for. What could be in his deck? Oh, look at that. Wow, City of Brass. Sorry, City in a Bottle, of course. Taking care of the City of Brass is... Oh, that is brutal. He was already winning. Oh, man. A very nasty demonstration of the deck of Richard here. And I played against Richard's deck at this tournament. And yeah, that was very painful. I managed to win at least 1 game. Where I got my Energy Flux out. So Energy Flux is really the MVP. But yeah, besides that, it was really, really rough. And especially that game 1 is kind of rough where you don't have your sideboard cards to deal with the artifact. So I can kind of, I can relate to what Chris is going through right now, especially since it takes so long. And remember, these semifinals are untimed. When you play in the Swiss rounds, like I was against Richard in the Swiss, then you only have 50 minutes. So at a certain point, you have to decide, do you want to continue playing against this prison situation, or you just want to sideboard in and make sure you can play the other 2 games? And I think the latter option is the best one. So you really need to think, okay, what are my odds to, still win this? And if it's 1% or less, pick up the cards and start game number 2. Because with the right sideboard, you can really, you really stand a chance against this deck. Anyway, here's a Felwer Stone. There's again the pass. Keeps, of course, tapping everything down. We see Chris just drawing, discarding, and passing on turns. And like I said, I think the only option for him is kind of to gather all the Moxen and the Black Lotus there and, try to make the best out of that. But it's going to be really tough. There we see another island. There's the pass again, tapping things down here. And Chris, okay, playing there a Mishra's Factory. Yeah, so this factory... in a way, I don't know what other lands. Maybe he's got more lands in hand, but it kind of surprises me. Because at least you're forcing. No, you don't actually, because now he can just tap down at 1 single land. Anyway, it doesn't matter much. He's gonna keep everything tapped down. Chris is gonna draw for turn. And I mean, at a certain point, we're gonna see that Titania's Song, and then there will be a modest little opener, perhaps, for Chris. Here we see an Ancestral Recall, going to draw 3. I mean, the thing is, Titania's Song, of course, turns all the non-artifact creatures into artifact creatures. So you're going to lose your Moxen because they've got a 0 casting cost. But of course, your, for example, your Ices become 4/4 creatures. So you want to make sure you have enough artifacts on the board that you can probably win it in one swing. Here we see a Soul Ring. Okay, he's counting. What is his big plan? Passing turn, tapping things down. There we see a discard again. Chaos Orb in the bin. Yeah, maybe. Would you want to keep Chaos Orb if you've got Chaos Orb Black Lotus, right? You can play it, you can flip on the Winter Orb. I mean, you're probably going to run into a counterspell. He's playing with Power Sinks as well, so... But still, you got to play towards your outs, right? Here we see him tap 3. Okay, there's another Transmute. I wonder what he's going to pick up. Maybe another Icy, because they're just, they're big. They're going to be beefy 4/4 boys when you hit that Titania Song on the table. It is nice to see the Transmute artifacts, by the way. Oh, of course. Yeah, this is a 6/6. This is a 6/6. with the Titania song out. This is, of course, Mirror Universe. He's not going to use the universe. He just wants it as a creature. And I actually have a deck myself, a reprint deck called Titania's Rings. It's white and green, and it revolves around the strategy of using Titania's song to turn your Aladdin's ring into an 8/8. It's pretty sweet. It's not a very good deck, but it's a fun deck. Anyway, we see Chris here discarding more stuff. And okay, there we see a workshop. And I mean, you know, if you're Richard, you're just patiently waiting until you draw into your Titania song. Especially now that you've got your 6/6 on the battlefield. Okay, he's gonna tap. What is he gonna do? I think a Brain Geyser. We can play a Brain Geyser for 4 now. Yeah, Brain Geysering for 4. And the thing, of course, for Richard here is to be very disciplined, right? To not be too greedy, to not give Chris any potential openings, not even a single mana to spend. Playing out here the Mox Jet after that Brain Geyser. Gonna tap the workshop. There we see another Relic Barrier, which is a potential 2/2. Gonna pass turn, tap things down again. There we see an Underground Sea. Okay, does this indicate some action? Perhaps an Ancestral Recall? Nope, just a pass. Gonna tap down, of course, the sea. And gonna tap his own Winter Orb. And by tapping it, you deactivate it so he can untap all his lands again. Yeah, this is really the luxury scenario that Richard was hoping for. And remember, this is the semifinals. He's gonna tap 6 mana. Ooh, what's he gonna do? He's gonna tap quite a lot. What are we gonna see? Oh, Mind Twist. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it took me a moment to realize that. Of course, we saw the Jet. Then he can Mind Twist. So checking out the hand that he now discarded. Although it doesn't really matter. There we see an Underground Sea. He's gonna pass turn. Tapping down. He's gonna draw a card for turn. Putting the card away. Then he's indicating that he's gonna tap his own Winter Orb to deactivate it so he can untap all his lands. And let's get that Titania song going, please. Maybe it's on the bottom of the library, who knows?
There's a first for everything.
Tapping a blue. Okay, he's going to start attacking maybe with the factory. But the factory, of course, still has Summoning Sickness. Is he going to copy it? Copy the factory. So that's, of course, another line that he can win the game with. And that's it. Chris is saying, you got this. So we didn't even see the Titania song. I'm a little bit disappointed. I was looking forward to see a 6/6 Mirror Universe start slamming in, you know, the brains of Chris. And that he can win the game that way with Titania song. But of course, the Mishra's Factories, that's another win con that he has if he has full control. Start copying that. But now I think the real test is going to come for Richard, because now Chris knows the plan. And of course, remember, Chris started with just 5 cards in that first game. So if Chris can sideboard correctly and just get a normal 7 in his opening hand, then everything is still possible. But for now, a great start for Richard. And we'll give these players some time to sideboard, and we will catch back up with them in game number 2. Game number 2, here we go with, of course, Chris on the plate. Here we see opening hand of Richard. So there's a workshop in there, a Felwar Stone. I also saw a Counterspell. I believe I saw an Icy. So looking pretty good with that workshop, of course, because then you can play your Icy really early in the game. Probably turn 2, turn 1, probably the Felwar. Let's see, is Chris going to keep? Looks like both players are going to keep their 7. Ooh, he did take a mulligan. Look at that. Ooh, okay, so he is going down to 6. Okay. So he took a mulligan. There we see a Badlands into a Bolt. Look at that, super aggressive. He's like, I don't want to get into prison while I still have my mana. I'm going to use them. And there we see the workshop. Going to tap the shop for 3. There's the Felwar Stone. Tapping the Felwar Stone, having one floating, of course. Look at that. Now he can play a Chaos Orb. What an opener again here for Richard. Oh, man. This is already going to be tough here for Chris. There we see an underground seed tapping to copying the Chaos Orb. Now that's a nice touch. I wonder if Richard is now going to flip on the copied Chaos Orb. But I like it because either way, it's a way to remove the Chaos Orb. I can really see him think what to do. There's a counter spell in hand. There's nothing he can do with that, of course. Only having access to one blue through the Felwar Stone. I mean, one of the lines he could go for is flip on the Chaos Orb, the copied Chaos Orb, and then play out his own Icy Manipulator. Or just say, you know what, it's there. I'm just going to ignore it, and I'm just going to continue playing. But he is going to go to flip on the Chaos Orb. I think that's a good decision. Picking his Bayou as the target for the Chaos Orb. Let's see if he can hit. Second flip for Richard here. Oh, it's a miss. Oh, it's a miss. He took, I have to say, he took a pretty high altitude. Remember, it's only a feet. But it's a miss. Now going to play that Icy. Yeah, this is perfect for Chris. This is just what Chris needed. That miss here of the Chaos Orb. And it's important, of course, for Richard now to forget about it. Whenever I miss in a match, you know, it can sometimes start, you know, become a mental thing. Anyway, there's the flip. Look at that. Chris doing it quite quickly. He doesn't want to think too much about it. Hitting the Icy Manipulator here. And again, this is so good for Chris. And there's another bolt to the dome. So he's going to drop to 14. And I have to say, after that missed flip, the world is looking completely different. I thought after that strong opener by Richard that Chris was in trouble again. But now it looks completely different. Of course, Chris is not there yet, but it's looking much better than in game number 1. Here we see a Winter Orb. So that means Chris can only untap 1. But of course, the Icy's being dealt with, and that's a huge difference here for Chris. So can Richard find another Icy? That's the question. Gonna tap the workshop. Another Winter Orb here on the battlefield. Which is, of course, a good idea because then you cannot get into a situation where your opponent on your end step will, for example, play a Shatter on your Winter Orb and then gets to untap everything. Tapping 6 here, it's kind of the magic number for Chris with the robots. There's a counterspell, though. Power Sync, actually, has to tap the City of Brass, take a damage. Yeah, this is a very important counterspell for Richard. And Richard, of course, has to think about his own. Winter Orbs can only untap 1 land, not both of them. So making a little mistake here. There's Titania's Song. Oh, so he's going to go aggressive mode. Oh, this is an interesting strategy. Swinging in for 4 with the 2 Winter Orbs. Gonna put Chris on 15. Having 3 2/2s on the battlefield. But it is risky. Remember, Chris is playing with 4 bolts for Psionic Blast as well. And of course, we've already seen some bolts. Here we see a Suchi. 4/4 Powerhouse. That can block the 2/2s for days. Of course, Chris only having 1 card left in hand. Richard also only 1 card in hand. So yeah, if Richard can now deal with the Suchi, he's got another 6 damage incoming. That's a pretty big if, though, if we look at his list. Remember, neither player is playing with white, and that makes it more difficult to deal with artifacts. There we see another Suchi. I mean, I would be tempted to swing in. I mean, he's got a double block, right? Or take 4, go to 10. And if he double blocks, it's a 2 for 1. There's the attack, exactly. Let's see. I mean, Richard was taking a risk, was kind of betting on Chris maybe not having an artifact creature in hand after countering, of course, at Triskelion. There we see another land. Does he have the Mirror Universe? Because that would be a 6/6. That's a big boy with the Titania Song. No, he doesn't. Passes the turn. Ay. And I'm expecting a double attack here by Chris with the 2 Suchis. There's a double attack for 8. And now you're kind of forced to at least double block one of them. Drop to 6, which is already kind of risky. You can see Richard there flicking the cards. He's not happy with the situation. Feel like he has to double block. He's going to put 2 Winter Orbs in front of one of the Suchis. There we see, yeah. Are we going to see counterspell on the Psionic Blast? I think we are. Yeah, counterspell on the Psionic, but it doesn't even matter that much because it's still a 2-for-1. And of course, Chris is dealing 4 damage. Maybe I would have even kept the Psionic Blast in hand to fire it off directly at the life total of Chris. There's the attack with the Felwar. There's the pass. So he's going to drop to 2. Chris in top decking mode here. There's the attack, dropping to 2. There's the bolt. There's, okay, a mana drain. He's not there yet. Oh, he's still alive and kicking. Needs a blocker though for that Suchi. Has the Felwar Stone, of course, and now he can double block. He can actually kill the Suchi. I mean, it's looking super bad for this shirt, but it's always funny to see like how long can he kind of stay alive. And there we see a thumbs down. The reason you see that, by the way, these are recordings from the live stream. So I guess somebody wasn't happy with the way this game was going. And Chris here, yeah, I mean, he's almost there, but he's not yet there. So looks like that maybe he's got another robot in hand. There's a shatter. Pretty good, right? So he can shatter one of the 2 artifacts that are now creatures. Taking care of the Winter Orb. There's the attack. Has to jump here. Living from the top of his library. That's it. Game number 2 here being won by Chris. But what a crazy game, right? The missed flip, going fully in it with Titania's Song. It was a big risk. It didn't pay out, but I kind of got it though. I understood why he did it. If Chris wouldn't have had that Suchi in hand, things would have looked so different. And remember, Chris only had 2 cards in hand at the time, so I think it was an estimated risk here taken by Richard. Anyway, both players are going to shuffle up, and we're going to go to an all-deciding game number 3. Game number 3, here we go. So it's 1-1, Richard on the play. And look at that, Chris again taking a mulligan, again starting on 6. There's a Mox Jet. There's an Underground Sea. There's a Soul Ring. So pretty explosive start here for Richard. And a Time Walk, okay. There he goes. Can he now deploy, for example, an Icy? Because then he can start tapping down the lands of Chris straight away. So strong opener. But what do we have as a follow-up? We see, of course, that Factory as well. Are we now going to see an Icy? There's an Icy. Yeah, this is tough for Chris. Let's see what Chris can do on his first turn. So drawing a card, going up to 7, of course, after taking that mulligan. There's a Volcanic. There's a Sapphire. Passing the turn. So we're going to see that tap probably of the Volcanic exactly. And then you also know that he cannot fire off a Lightning Bolt on that Factory. So you kind of have a clear attack for 2. There we see a Library of Alexandria. Yeah, it doesn't have a lot of cards in hand, right? 2, 3 cards maybe. Flicking through the cards there. I guess you just want to attack with the Factory, right? Tapping 2 first. There's Chaos Orb. It's going to flip. Or not. It's going to attack for 2. For a moment there, I thought it was going to flip on the Sapphire. Going to tap down, of course, the Volcanic Island. There we see an Underground Sea. We see another Mox, the Mox Emerald. Are we going to see a copy? We're going to see a Mind Twist for 1. So it looks like he's going to lose a card here. It's going to lose the Crumble. The Crumble would have been nice. Of course, he didn't have any green mana to cast it, but the Crumble on one of the Moxen would have been quite good. So Mind Twist for 1 here. And now drawing a card for turn. And he's going to attack for 2 again, so putting Chris on 16. 1 card left in hand. You can see Richard thinking to flip or not to flip. That's the question. He's going to tap down the Volcanic. Of course, making sure that he doesn't have any red mana for a potential Shatter or a Lightning Bolt. Now, do remember, Chris, of course, plays with 4 Psionic Blasts as well. There we see a Factory on the side of Chris. Going to tap 4. We're going to see a Suchi. There's a Suchi. Passing the turn, and we're going to see a flip on end step here, probably on the Suchi. Okay, is he going to hit it now? I mean, so far he's flipped in every single game. He had a miss, of course, in game 2 and a hit in game 1. Oh, again a miss. Oh, Richard. I am not used to seeing Richard missing so many flips. He's really good normally. with flipping, but having kind of an off day today, and that could really be decisive here. If he would have hit the Suchi, he would have at least been able to attack for another 2 and put Chris on 14. We do have a lot of glare, unfortunately, by the way, on that Suchi. And tapping 2, what are we going to see? Yeah, there's a Winter Orb. I mean, this is all pretty good for these shards. You know, he's got Winter Orb, he's got Icy going. The problem, of course, is that missed flip now. And the fact that Chris has more cards in hand. So yeah, pointing out the Winter Orb, so cannot untap everything, just one land, untapping the Volcanic. Yeah, but of course the Moxie now for Chris, or his ticket for the victory, I feel, and of course that Suchi, so he's gonna probably declare attacks. Let's see if Richard wants to tap down the Suchi. So the glared card there, just to clarify, is the Suchi, 4/4 Suchi. He's gonna tap 2 first. Is he gonna copy the Suchi? No, he's gonna shatter. I mean, I would. Oh, he's gonna shatter the. Yeah, exactly. Shatter the Icy. For a moment, I thought he wanted to shatter the Jet. I'm like, why would you want to do that? And in response, of course, Richard's gonna tap down the Suchi of Chris. At least not taking any damage, but that's not gonna take long. It's looking pretty awful for Richard here. It's gonna pay 2. What are we gonna see? Okay, there's a Demonic. That is something. What to look up? Does he play with the Time Twister? I would be tempted to go for Time Twister. Also because you have the Library of Alexandria. And then you have 7 in hand again. You can kind of start over. I mean, it's risky, yes. But you got to do something. Another option could be just Ancestral Recall, draw 3. Icy would be good, but if you go for Icy, you got to tap everything down just to play it, and you can't use it. So, yeah, he's going to go for Ancestral Recall here. So Ancestral Recall, draw 3. I mean, it's good, but the problem here is he's behind. You know, he needs a power card. And I think the thing in this matchup is what I said in the introduction, or in game 1 at the start. You know, is that the Abyss is not working against these robot decks. That's really tough. He's going to play his other card in hand, which is a Tropical Island, draw 3 cards. Let's see what he can find. I'm going to tap the Soul Ring for a Felwar Stone. Yeah, passing the turn. And the thing with the robots deck, it's too brutal, man. It's too aggressive. Looks like he's gonna choosing to untap the other factory, so there's a Library of Alexandria. Only 2 cards in hand, of course, for Richard, and I believe 2 cards for Chris as well. No, 1 card. Attacking for 4. So Richard taking the first points of damage. Gonna tap 4. There's another Suchi. Ay. So he's tearing down to 8 potential points of damage. Maybe even 10 if he animates the factory. Then again, he can block 1 if he wants to. But it's not looking great for Richard. At least he's still on 16 now, but needs something really, really good. He's gonna tap 4, 5. Okay, are we gonna see a Brain Geyser? Just gonna go for the full 6 then if it's a Brain Geyser. Brain Geysering for 6. I guess like a Mirror Universe. Then again, you don't have the time, right? Because you're now going to take a hit for, let's say, 10. You drop to 6. So Mirror is not going to save you. This is pretty good, this Maze of If. That's helpful. Counting the cards. I mean, Brain Geyser is pretty good. But remember, the Winter Orb also works against the Richard here. He doesn't have a Relic Barrier or Icy to tap it down. So yeah, it's just not great for Richard passing the turn. And Chris can smell the victory. If he wins this, he's going to advance to the finals. That, of course, you can also see here on the channel. He's going to animate full-on Alpha Strike. Going to send back one of the Suchis. Take 8, half his life. Going to go down to 8. Richard really in a pickle here. Has to find the white light in the tunnel. The question is there a white light in the tunnel? I mean, at these situations you need a balance, but neither player is playing with white. Shatterstorm would be great as well, but that's also a card that Richard doesn't have. He does have another mace though, so could maybe prolong his life a little bit. Does he want to take the mace back here? No, gonna play out the mace. I guess a mace and then a relic barrier would be quite nice. Relic in general is quite good, of course, in this matchup against the robots deck. And relic here can also tap your own winter orb, so you can at least get to untap all your lands again. Yeah, this is really tough for Richard. Needs that relic barrier to tap down the winter orb, because remember, mazes of Ep4 also lands. It's gonna go through his hand. I mean, he has such a good start of this match. You know, game 1, everything went his way, but after that, it didn't go so well with 2 missed flips. 1 in game 2, 1 in game 3. And again, if it would have hit that Suchi, it would have been such a different game. And there we see Chris untapping the Volcanic. So does that mean that he has a bolt in hand, perhaps to fire off? Passing the turn. Yeah, and look at this, Richard just untapping the single mace. Ay, 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 ay. It is not great. There's not a relic though. For a moment I thought maybe you're going to cast a relic. It's a Flower Stone. Changing his mind. Tapping the jet. Okay, and he's going to Mind Twist. And in response, oh, there's a counter spell. I thought in response maybe a bolt or a Psionic Blast, but there's a counter spell on the Mind Twist. So that's pretty good for him. Just 1 card left in hand for Chris. I mean, if Richard can stabilize, which is a huge if, because I don't think he can, but if he can stabilize, he's got way more cards. You know, he could get back into it, but like I said, it's a big if. We see a potential attack of 10 here. And only 1 mace untapped, so he'll have to take 6, drop to 2. In a deck that's packing 4 bolts and 4 Psionic Blasts. Here's the attack. Probably gonna send 1 back here. Richard flicking through the cards. Sending back a Suchi, taking 6, dropping to 2. Untapping that lonely maze. I mean, he's got mana with that Black Lotus, I guess. So, what could save him here? He's on 2. I mean, let's start with the Relic Barrier, right? But even then, nope. Giving the hand here to Chris. And, yeah, also showing the Lightning Bolt. So, Chris winning here and advancing to the finals. And if you want to see the finals, keep an eye on the channel. Hit that subscribe button. And ring that bell, because then you don't miss a thing. And you can see the finals here, of course, on Timmy Talks. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you for supporting the show. You can also leave a like, a comment, or share this on your socials. YouTube loves that stuff, and it's all free, and it really helps the channel move forward. Talking about moving forward, you can also become a patron of the show. Check out patreon.com/TimmyTalks for all the information.
What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. Early in the morning, put him in the longboat until he's sober, put him in the longboat until he's sober, put him in the longboat until he's sober. Early in the morning, way hey and up she rises, way hey and up she rises. Rises early in the morning. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Pull out the plug and wet him all over. Early in the morning. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises early in the morning. What shall we do with the drunken sailor? What shall we do with the drunken sailor? Put him in the scoundrel. 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 Early in the morning. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises. Way hey up she rises early in the morning.
Igitus figitus sumba kazee.